So, Jason, thank you for joining us today on our first CISO live series. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, no, first off, appreciate you having me, Sri. It's always good to have what I'd consider a conversation with friends. Jason Lish, I'm the Chief Security Officer for Lumen Technologies. And basically, I have responsibility for what I'd consider cybersecurity, physical security, fraud, and then our critical infrastructure program. And for those that don't know who Lumen is, we're one of the largest telecommunications provider and now evolving more into a technology company. But we provide internet services, edge compute, cloud capabilities, and roughly about 70% of the world's internet traffic transverses through our environment. So we see a lot, and it's as a security professional, it's a big responsibility.
Thank you, Jason. It's an honor. Srinivas Mukamala. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Ivanti. I think most of you know who Ivanti is. We take pride in securing the world. We're the world's largest patch management vendor. And if you take a look at Ivanti's mission, we're all about disrupting the IT from a convergence perspective, securing the device, securing the user, and providing the best human experience. With that said, Jason, where did you start your journey? You have an amazing journey from where you started, where you are today. So why don't you tell us where you started? Why did you pick cyber as your main core area? And also tell us, how did you come to protect one of the world's largest global networks, right? Because critical infrastructure is one thing, the world's comms is another thing, but would love to know your journey.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, it's always interesting to hear about, people's background and how they evolved. For me, a lot of it was what I'd consider just sort of navigating and building experience over time, not necessarily having that North Star in mind, but fortunate to be where I'm at today. So I actually started my career in the United States Air Force. And when I went in, I actually didn't have a guaranteed job. And I was fortunate to get a responsibility around telecommunications and networking. And got a tremendous amount of experience working on multi-million-dollar networks. And so for me, it was just a wonderful experience. And I actually intended to stay in 20 years, but due to some personal reasons, I decided to get out. And when I left, I actually ended up at Honeywell International. And there I spent about 10 years in various responsibilities. I really started my career early on in infrastructure and networking, and then was approached by a good friend of mine who was the CISO for aerospace at the time to ask me if I'd take on application security. And I didn't know anything about security or development, but he said, you know the environment, you know the developers, you have great relationships, and think you'd be great at this. And really, that was my journey at that point. So took on SAP security for the corporation, took on security architecture, operations. And it was just really a progression of different areas of expertise because particularly as a CISO, and one of the biggest pieces of advice I give is get different vertical experience or different horizontal experience because you need to understand all the different facets of a security program to really be able to lead your organization through, progressing maturity. So, that's really what I did. And so about 10 years in, I was approached by Charles Schwab and actually originally had just declined the opportunity, but they were very persistent, and I ended up deciding to go over and joining their organization and building out the security program there. So at Schwab, I was responsible for all the what consider first line security defenses. And it was a great experience to go from manufacturing to finance, because the other perspective is getting that different industry expertise so that you can compare and be able to take certain best practices, as you build up your programs. So I spent about 7 years at Schwab, and then actually after that, I left and took my first CSO position, official CSO position over at Alight, which was a previously Aon Hewitt, so they're the large benefits provider, and they had just spun out from Aon into Blackstone. So really wanted experience in a IPO path, and within private equity. Spent a couple years there building out their program, and then eventually progressing over to Lumen. So for me, the reason why I chose Lumen is because that journey they're on from a telecommunications provider. And a lot of people don't know, as formerly CenturyLink, they've been around for 100 plus years. And so, the deep history in, the world's connectivity, but transitioning over to a technology company seems very exciting, and, wanted to be part of that journey. I've never had that type of vertical experience. And so being able to take everything that I've applied up to this point and bring it into Lumen is it's been a fun journey so far. So been here about a year and a half, and really enjoy it, and we'll continue the progression. As far as why the chief security officer or CISO position, for me it's really around the ability to be a part of the business growth factor, and because security is so important now for companies to maintain brand protection and actually being a part of that growth strategy, it's very fascinating for me to be on that part of that leadership, being able to grow teams and mentor other aspiring security professionals is a deep passion of mine, and I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of that. But most importantly, I think security is one of those areas where it's constantly evolving. And as a CISO or CSO, every day is different. And that's something I truly appreciate about what I do. I never get bored. I have, a small case of ADD. So, this is a perfect career, from a personality perspective. So yeah, it's been great. And I'd say the last thing is the community is fantastic. As you know, Shri, it's a very small environment with the CISOs, and regardless of the competitive landscape that we have across organizations, we're all in this together, and sort of like the military days, we're in the fight, regardless of what branch you're in. And so being able to pick up the phone and talk about and share ideas and threat intelligence and best practices. There's no other industry like it.
Thank you, Jason. I mean, first, thank you for your service for the United States government. We all enjoy that passion, not only serving our citizens, but our government, right? That's a forefront in a mission. Like you stated, I mean, you're one of the very few CISOs in the nation who actually grew through the technical ranks. I mean, you were looking at application security when nobody was even properly thinking endpoint, right? It's on the forefront, it's on the cutting edge. And if you take a look at it, it's all about developer-centric, it's all about applications. And one fascinating thing is you've been in critical infrastructure, be it the Air Force, be it finance, be it manufacturing, enough communications and software. So you're always on the front lines, right? If you look at the companies you were with, Schwab, it's people's money, right? Retirement funds. And if you look at Honeywell, I mean, every single smart city down to critical infrastructure systems. When you look at Lumen, they're pretty much the last mile. And they're also the trusted internet connectivity for the US government. So how do you look, I mean, when you look at your journey, the lessons you learn in the mission, and when you take them back and apply, I mean, what was the commonality? I mean, what was the difference? Can you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, even going back to the military days, a couple things that they really instilled in us was attention to detail. It was always making sure that we're looking at everything, our surroundings, because when you're in battle, and having spent time over in Kuwait and other forward locations, you have to make sure that that you're checking all the perspectives and analyzing everything so that you're making well-informed decisions, because it could impact people's lives. So I've always taken that, as throughout my career, is making sure to look at all the different components so that I can make well-informed decisions and really learning and understanding the different businesses that I'm in. That's important because different companies have different risk postures and, different critical assets that they need to protect. And, obviously it's important to quickly understand that and the details around that. I think the other lesson that I learned early on, particularly in the military, is that sense of belonging and teamwork, because everybody's kind of in this together, and so building those key relationships around those companies from a business standpoint, and the reliance and those partnerships are really key, regardless of what organization I was in, because a lot of what we do is through influence and having to drive certain things through the business or through functional areas. So being able to have that relationship and pick up the phone and understand and appreciate where different perspectives are coming from, I think is a key important factor for us and a commonality that I've had across different organizations. I would say what's different is the business approach and I mentioned the risk tolerance piece of it. So manufacturing, obviously, it's all about the widget that's being output and applying Six Sigma and reducing defects and all of those things that goes into quality. And so what I learned there is how do I embed security early on? So in the application development and product lifecycle is how do you make sure to truly shift left back before it was even a term. I mean, this is 2005, 2006. And working directly with those developer teams to make it their own and have them start to embed those capabilities as opposed to it being a bolt-on. That's something I learned very quickly, and something that we're still applying today. And then shifting into the financial sector, being in there for over 10 years, having a heavy regulated organization. You had the Federal Reserve, you've got the Treasury, you have the SEC, you have FINRA, all these different entities that are coming in to test your skills and capabilities. There's a fine balance of driving the things that need to be done from a threat and protective standpoint, but also accommodating the regulatory and compliance aspects that have to be done as well. But how do you take some of the value of those regulatory reviews and use that to get some of the things that you need to get done that to mature the program as well? And what I find fascinating, and the reason why I bring that up, is I'm now in critical infrastructure where the world runs on the services that we provide, and there's no regulation, none. And so coming in, I'm finding a lot of interesting aspects of things that I would just expect to be in place, and we're quickly maturing a lot of those capabilities. But there's a lot of commonalities between this industry, just because there hasn't been that big stick like in the financial services. So taking some of those best practices that I learned from the financial sector and now applying it to where I'm at now, around how do we identify risk and treat it and prioritize so that we're making the right informed decisions, I think is an advantage that I have now because of the experience that I've been able to progress to.
Amazing, right? I mean, that's really what we want every security leader to do. Do the right thing from a risk perspective. Your compliance is going to follow you. If you try to fit compliance into the risk equation, you're going to make compromises, right? It's amazing, Jason. I mean, I think that summary is extremely helpful. So first, I'm a beneficiary of you mentoring me when I was a CEO, right? You mentor so many people. I mean, you have the nature of giving back to the community. I mean, you talked about collaboration, and I want to absolutely acknowledge how many CEOs benefited from solving the right problem, because end of the day, you see problems and you want smart people to go solve them. You're also a big proponent of diversity. I mean, I remember our early conversations. You want to see different ethnic groups. You want to see different genders. You want to see different walks of life, not just computer scientists. Actually come into cyber, experience it, cherish it, and really being that collaborator issue. Can you shed some light on diversity, inclusion, and why it is very important for us as an industry to be more welcoming and start turning the tide?
Yeah, no, I appreciate and thank you for the kind words on the mentorship. And I think and a lot of CISOs that have been around will tell you, similar to myself, is that we're all in this together. So it's the solutions and the products that come to the market. We want to make sure that the right capabilities and defensive measures that we can utilize. So the more that we can steer that early on, so that it's a greater advantage for the industry and the community, the better for all of us. So thank you, and that's something that I love to do along with a lot of my peers. I hate to go back to my military days, but that was part of my roots. In the military, all branches, no matter where you're at, you're in there with all walks of life. People from large cities, people from small towns, from different ethnicities, and it's you become one because you're all in it together, and you have one mission, regardless of where you come from. But the great thing with those environments is everybody brings a different perspective to get to that end state, where you need to from a mission standpoint. And I think that's no different in corporate environments as well. So when you talk about diversity of thought, it's important to have different backgrounds, different ethnicities that come together, and so I've prided myself on the teams that I've built up and mentored. Right now my leadership team is almost 50% diverse, and for me that's wonderful because we all bring different perspectives, and it's like any team, you've got to normalize and start to really operate as one. But I think in the end, having those different perspectives is going to be key to driving a really, really mature and robust program. And early on, I've gotten involved in different programs. Europe.org is a big program that I'm involved in, and where they take urban youth that were didn't necessarily have a lot of the opportunities that some others had. And so if I can take interns from, somebody that was working two jobs to support their parents, early on when they were 17 years old, and, they're hungry and eager, and they come from urban environments. And if you could take folks like that and put them in and get them exposure, it's so wonderful to see, that, and we need to do more of that. I think if we can get involved and continue to get involved in early programs like that, I think it'll be beneficial to continue to drive, the diverse environments that we need to. Even from a veteran standpoint, Workforce Opportunity Services is another program where, we're trying to take veterans and bring them into environments and give them, exposure that they wouldn't necessarily get in corporate environments as they transition out. So I think we all can do more to continue to get involved. I can do more, but I think that's going to be an important part of our journey to continue that progression.
Again, thank you, Jason, for spending your time. I mean, this time I know is very valuable. There's a lot the younger generation and our peers can learn from this. Again, thank you for your service to the nation, and thank you for being a great friend and a supporter of the next gen entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.